what does your authentic voice really mean? What does your authentic story really mean? And how do you conjure that up and open your mouth and speak into the world? This is a focus that I want to talk about today. Christabel is somebody who I met recently, and I'm so blown away by her leadership in the space, by her resolve to make sure people have access to using their voices in the most powerful way, which is in podcasting and swellcasting, and her ability to really look at the power of more nuanced content and understanding that sometimes we are leaving out the voices that need to rise. And I want to understand what that looks like from the perspective of her career and how this can kind of embolden all of us to really question, how are we using our voices? Are we using them in a consistent way? Are we lifting other voices while we use our own? These are all questions I want to cover. So, wow, Christabel, thank you for being on Swell and kind of leading us in this conversation, and kind of in a no BS way. Like, I really want to understand the pain points, the gaps you're seeing in education, how your award-winning experience has brought you to a place where you really are able to be inside and work to change the outside, and what that looks like for you. So I guess my first question is sort of an obvious one. Give us a sense of where you've been to this point in terms of your trajectory. Help us know the milestones in the most concise way possible, just so we can know from you what's important and what you really want to highlight. And of course, I'm going to link your organization here, your own production company here, because that's a big passion of yours. And then we can go from there. So thanks so much for being here, and I really look forward to this conversation. Hey, thanks for understanding my mistake. I said Christabel, and I meant Christabel. Names are important. Sorry I messed yours up.
Deborah, wow. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this swell space. And I appreciate what you said about names and names mattering. They do. And so the apology meant a lot, but it did something else. It actually reminded me about where all of this began, because my name is Christabel, but my name is also Amma. That's the first name that I knew as a kid, right? I am a Scottish-born to Ghanaian parents, so I'm a British-born Ghanaian kid. And really my trajectory, the place where this all started, was at home, because I grew up listening to stories. My parents were very young immigrants in Scotland, and I remember I have one vivid memory of looking at this Donna Summer cover, not knowing who she was, and I was super, super young. So I didn't know, it wasn't making sense, but she looked like an angel, and she's lying on this crescent moon in this white dress. But my parents are sharing all the stories of their days, of these interesting, strange people, these Brits that they're learning to, kind of make friends with and connect with. And as I grew older, I remember thinking, these stories that are so familiar to me, that are so dynamic, are not stories that I hear about my community outside in the world, in the news. And I wanted to know why. And I've always been kind of equity minded in that sense. And I've always loved reading, and I always loved talking to people. And so that's kind of where it started. That, and with music, because, fun fact, I always wanted to be a DJ. There are tapes somewhere that I created at the age of 8 of me pretending to be a DJ. And that's really how I ended up in this audio space, because I loved interviewing people or pretending to interview people and sharing facts about the music that I loved. But somewhere along the line, that curiosity about people and about the world and about history took over, and I pursued a more journalistic route, which took me to journalism. I worked for Air America. I worked for National Public Radio. I worked for Pacifica as a reporter, as a host, and as a writer, and leading shows, running shows. And so in doing all of that work, I got to meet people, because I like talking to people, because I find that a wonderful way to learn, not just about topics, but about humanity. And I used to find people that others would say, oh, where did you get this voice from? And my answer was always, if you just talk to that person down the road, I guarantee they have something to say. But that attitude meant that I was able to pitch stories and that people listened to the pitches that I had. And I developed a reputation, I guess, as somebody who was able to find a story and find that thread that connected a very personal story to something that was understood universally. So that is the beginning of that. I have plenty more to say, but I'm gonna challenge myself to keep this as short as possible. But I will respond after I hear your thoughts. So again, thank you very much for inviting me to this swell space. I'm really excited to see what we can do.
Wow, you are so wired for story. It seems that, even as an 8-year-old, you wanted to weave together stories and rhythm and sounds and moving bodies, and it seems like a system thing for you. How exciting that you knew it back then, and just great to hear your beginnings. Wow. The title of this swell around, does your voice speak your truth? I know that from a place of journalism, sort of the overarching idea of being a journalist is having the ability to do, first source research and get stories out there as quick as possible. And voice, to me, seems so expedient. When you think about people learning the craft of using their voice in podcasting and journalism and reporting, where is the biggest hurdle for people that you find, because you've been in the education space as long as you've been in the audio space? Where do people bump in their trust of their voice? And how do you help them get over that bump?
Oh, okay. This is a good one. So first of all, you talked about knowing the system. I didn't know that it was the system in terms of the storytelling. I just understood that that and drawing, I connect with the world through drawing. I haven't drawn in years, but my talents, one of my most obvious talents was in drawing, but I did not pursue that. It was with writing. And so really, but all of those required observation and quiet observation of the world. And I am naturally a watcher of people. Even though I love voice, what I love more is kind of watching and connecting with the world in a way that is honest and vulnerable, actually. And that goes directly to answering the question about what's the biggest hurdle that people have when it comes to using their voice. It's accessing their vulnerability. And it's something that I had and continue to have a challenge with, right? Because we are raised to always sound authoritative. And in sounding authoritative, we rely upon using the facts to prove a point, as opposed to using rigor, for example, and using facts, because facts are important. Actual facts are important to tell the truth of the matter. And so this is where people kind of say, well, I'm not an expert in the subject, but everyone is an expert in their life. Everyone is an expert in the thing that they've experienced. And so the biggest hurdle that people constantly have when it comes to telling their story is really trusting their instincts and really accessing the part of themselves that requires them to tell the story, to tell the truth of their story, not just the facts of it, not just that I woke up in the morning and then I brushed my teeth and then I did X, Y, and Z, or that I brushed my teeth and I brushed them a little too hard and then that kind of got me annoyed. It's the truth of the matter, right? Why were you brushing your teeth too hard, for example? Did you wake up in a bad mood? Why did you wake up in a bad mood? What was the thing that was troubling you? And often when it comes to audio, whether it's journalism in the traditional sense, or whether it's sharing our opinions and our thoughts and feelings and opinions in podcasting, we rely on those things to kind of hide the fact of the way in which we want to connect with people. We're telling stories because we want to connect. We're interviewing people because we want to connect. We are reporting on a story because we think it's important, because it's connected with us and we think it will connect with other people. But in order for that to happen, you need to connect with your vulnerability. And when I say vulnerability, I literally do mean, well, how do I feel about that? And why do I think that's important? And that requires sitting with something for a little while and examining it, all of it, the good, the bad, and sometimes the painful. And last year I trained some early career podcasters, a few. Excuse me, that's my computer because I'm sitting at my desk. A few of them in various projects. And that was the thing that I found, is that when people were too defensive or too scared or felt like they had to be the smartest person in the room, they always struggled when they realized that people weren't connecting with their work. But there was a reason why. And some people were able to walk through that. I pride myself on being able to create a safe space. As a leader, as an editorial leader, as a person in the room, I'm always the first to kind of break that barrier down. And the people who didn't, they may have gone on to check all the boxes, but ultimately it wasn't a fun process for them.
You're making me think about that phrase, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. And when it comes to conjuring up a voice to use in the world, I think you're hitting on something that is so important, which is if we choose to be following our instincts, following our interests, leading with that hunger to know, to understand, you have to meet people in that inquiry with your own level of authenticity and vulnerability. And we've seen those words bantered about big time in the last 10 years especially. And I'm always curious about how that tone translates. Is it just a tone, or is it truly a systemic truth about somebody? If someone is truly accessing their most vulnerable and raw and real selves in an interview situation, it's going to be a model for the person they're talking to. And this is what I find so interesting about voice and about audio, is that it is a quick study as opposed to writing or other things. If I see a video of somebody, I'm looking at too many things. The lighting, the person, the environment, their teeth, all this stuff. But when I'm listening to your voice, I'm leaning into your voice, and not just your voice as a sound waves, but I'm hearing you in a way that I'm leaning in and I'm trying to understand you, because your tone is giving me so much of your DNA. It's giving me your intention. And I think that's where audio is it's the king of kings in terms of us kind of ranking something as a vehicle for fast, efficient ways of connecting. I love audio. So clearly you do too. You've been in this space for a long time. But let's jump to the next kind of vibrating platform here to talk from, which is we're living in a world that is completely screwed up when it comes to trust. We have deep fake this and all the stuff that we realize can be generated by not the authentic person behind it. So where do you figure your work living into the future in terms of teaching audio and preparing people, especially with Sound Up? Do you think it's inextricably linked to the survival of our society as a place where people can get to the real stuff and get to the important stuff? I'm leading the question, obviously. It's how I feel, but I want to know how you feel and what you're seeing as hopeful in the space of audio in connection to our very survival and democracy.
Man, that is such a big question. But I am hopeful, right? Maybe I'm being naive. I don't know. I'm hopeful because I think that despite, the progression of technology in terms of being able to record a snippet of someone's voice, and then you can have them say, or have this interpretation of this thing say whatever that person says. I think it goes back down to your hearing that DNA. I haven't really articulated it ever in that way, in terms of like hearing someone's DNA. But for me, audio is extremely personal. And I want to scroll back a little bit to some of the things that you had mentioned, which I think and I hope will answer that, right? Answer your broader question about the future of audio and voice. In short, I don't think it's going away. I am not worried. I do think that there is work to be done. But I think ultimately we have seen time and time again that technology has created, on one hand, we are connected, but on a very, very deep and personal level, we are increasingly disconnected because we are talking to each other through devices as opposed to face to face and in other ways. And people are missing that. And I think that people understand the importance of that. And so whether that's naive or not, I don't know. But that's right now, that's where I stand on that. With regards to the importance of audio, I'm going to share a fun fact. And I'm going to scroll back, as I said earlier, to one of your earlier questions. So fun fact, I got into audio, yes, because I love music, and yes, because I love story. But there was a time when I actually wanted to be in TV. I actually wanted to be a TV journalist. And I tried, but I understood very quickly that this would likely not happen for me, or it wouldn't happen for me in a way that might be easier for others because of how I looked and because of what I am and who I am. How I look and what I look, being a chocolate-skinned black woman with an African name living in the UK. I remember having a conversation with my dad saying, if I wanted to go to Northern Ireland and report in Northern Ireland, why couldn't I? And his answer, which is a very valid one, which is they're going to go for the expert, and the expert is typically the person who is from that place, the journalist who's from that place, or the person who has very deep knowledge. Now that could be me, but if it's me up against a Northern Irish person, then I may not win that, and that's all fair and good. But I'm saying that because going back to this point of honesty and being at a space of pure vulnerability, that was not something that I was afforded. None of us are really afforded that. But what I understood was that if I was truly vulnerable, in the sense that I showed fear, or yes, weakness, which is not a dirty word, I would be unsafe. I could be unsafe physically because there are people around us, society, we couldn't necessarily trust society with our hearts or even with our physical bodies. I'm a girl, right? As a black person, you couldn't be completely vulnerable in particular spaces in terms of being honest, because if you were that could be used against you. And that happened to me time and time again. So I actually I became invulnerable in a lot of ways. That strong black woman trope is real for a reason. And I bring that up not to kind of like talk about that and like go on and on and on about that. But I think when we talk about vulnerability, I come from, my cultural heritage, and I come from a people where voice and audio is first. Always. We tell stories. African griots. But even in my own culture, there were constantly stories. So for me, it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So in a very roundabout way, I think I'm answering that question of I'm not concerned about that. I think we all need to understand the value of connecting with people. And audio is very, very personal and intimate in that way. Because like you said, you're stripped from all of the other stuff, right? How someone looks. You're just hearing them. You're hearing the silence sometimes. And you got me thinking about that more and more, because oftentimes when I'm interviewing people, or when I'm producing a show, or through my work with Sound Up, I do often say to people, when you're listening to audio and you play it back, it is about how the person feels, because there's no hiding who a person is and how they feel, and even how they're acting in that moment. And I don't think any kind of AI can ever replace that. So what I mean by that is, for example, even on a very basic level, I'm in a car, it's raining, and there is a police car driving past me, See, look, that's that's the reporter in me giving a description of where I am, visuals. But back to my answer. Even when you think about when someone's putting on their radio voice, or they're putting on their BBC voice, or they're putting on their reader voice, right? Or they're putting on the voice to be understood by people that they've never met before. That gives us so much about how comfortable they're feeling to be their true selves. And we all have it, right? But if you're talking to someone that you feel completely comfortable with, and I know that this is the case for me, you will sound completely different. If you heard me talking to my homies or you're talking to a family member, I would sound completely different to how I'm currently talking to you. And I feel extremely comfortable talking to you right now, right? But I know that if I'm utterly relaxed, my tone, my intonation, even my accent actually switches a tiny bit because of the environment or the topic, or my passion toward the thing that I'm talking about. And so that's why vulnerability and honesty is so important. And that's the thing that I really teach the people that come to me for guidance about how they're going to write a script or how they should shape their show, right? If you're going to be the expert, trust that you are the expert. But the reason why people are going to listen to you is not because you have 10,000 degrees in a particular topic. It's because you are A, passionate about it, but B, you actually had the discipline to do the research in the topic, to form an opinion, and to be willing enough to say, I'm going to take you on this journey with me. I know this much, and this is why I think this is important. Come with me, and I'm going to join me on this journey, or I'm going to lead you on this journey. You've got to decide what your role is in terms of the audio, but you also have to decide how you're going to communicate with the audience that you've asked to listen to what you're talking about. That's why vulnerability is so important.
Wow, this has been such a vital moment for me to listen to you and end in this idea of what choices we make as storytellers. Are we leading or are we walking with? And it's quite a meta moment. And I just want to thank you so much for going into the detail and doing the second reply, because I think this is really where, when I sit and talk with you about audio and I think about interactive audio, it makes a big difference to what you just said. In traditional reporting, traditional podcasting, we're broadcasting out towards the listener and they're on a journey with us. And everything you said is absolutely resonates with me about the authenticity, the humility with which one approaches a topic and does great research and shows their respect of primary sources, their respect of just bringing in the best possible layout of how the story is going to roll. And all this is such a production for the listener. But when you're in interactive audio, where someone is now saying, I'm listening to you, but I'm also going to add my voice to your story, like we're doing in this swell, it's a different paradigm for me. And I'm kind of struck by how deeply it's impacting my understanding of how this is a bit of a disruption, because I fell into your voice and now I'm bringing you my voice, and somebody will hear this and they'll go, wow, I was so into Christabel's voice and now Deborah's voice is here, and now will my voice be here? Will I come in and take it down a new road? And the iterative aspect of this is so breathtakingly invigorating. It's a great thing, but it also says, when do we want to report out and broadcast out, and when do we want to engage and pull in the voices? And I think we're at a time in our society when we have been so overwhelmed by the noise factor of everyone having an opinion, everyone being a citizen journalist, everybody being a producer, everyone broadcasting their songs and their videos and do we want that pristine, pure professional voice just laying into our hearts and taking us on a journey? And it's just a choice. It's choices we make. And to go even more meta, I closed this conversation just to have our voices dance together. And now I'm going to open it. And I'm going to take it off invite only so that new voices will come in and join this and iterate with us and take it down a new path. And that's a different kind of journey. It's a walking with as opposed to leading, and it's just profound, and it's a choice. It's a choice we have to make, and we set by examples. So you and I have dropped into our authentic voices. They're chosen voices for this kind of exchange. We're not, at a bar hanging out with a friend, having our second drink. We're comporting ourselves with responsibility and a certain amount of flow. But who knows where this will go? And that's exciting and invigorating. It's also, we know in the past and all around us, we see these things fall apart. It's like playing telephone. You start with one idea and it comes out completely different. So thank you for ping-pong with me back and forth. It's such a stunning example of what's possible in terms of going into an idea and workshopping it out loud. And let's continue with new voices. And thank you for being on Swell. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all grows and amplifies even our quietest thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure, and I am excited and looking forward to hearing back from the rest of the community.